Baseball may be America's pastime, but spending money on frivolous crap is a pretty close second these days. That brings us to the 2023 New York Mets. You're hearing a lot of media outlets and baseball broadcast booths saying something along the lines of the amount of dead money the club is paying out this season alone is equivalent to the 14th highest payroll in Major League Baseball. It's a catchy stat, it sounds good, it's also pretty false. Steve Cohen is handing more than $56 million to players that don't suit up for his team, which is a lot. It's basically the Oakland A's payroll. So here is everything you need to know about the best team money can buy. Other teams, that is. The claim that the New York Mets are paying the equivalent to the 14th highest MLB payroll in dead money is a byproduct of some pretty dodgy accounting. It's a combination of including lump sums for future seasons, not factoring in other totals, and simply trying to inflate the figure to make it sound more shocking. That's all fine and well, but how much money are the New York Mets really paying in dead money this season? It's a bit hard to get an exact figure, but based on some estimates we've done, that total comes out to be $56,420,000. We got to this sum by focusing on money used to cover player payments for 2023 alone. That means Bobby Bonilla is included in our figure, but Justin Verlander's 2024 salary payments are not. So let's meet the Mets. Come on down and greet the Mets who, well, aren't really Mets anymore. Let's start with Robinson Cano. You'll see a lot of reports out there claiming that he is being paid $24 million by the New York Mets. That does not seem to be the complete truth here. According to Spotrac, the Seattle Mariners are still covering $4 million of his salary as well, which means the second baseman only truly accounts for $20 million in dead money. This is the New York Mets' single largest dead money hit at the moment. As a bonus too, they did get Edwin Diaz out of this deal. Cano's contract finally expires at the end of this season, which is good for New York considering how much cash they are about to be shipping out in the future. It's easy to forget that James McCann even played for the Mets after his fairly forgettable 2-year spell with the ball club. He was signed after a decent stint with the White Sox where he did make his lone All-Star game. His output didn't exactly align with Steve Cohen's visions of grandeur in 2023. The Mets shipped out McCann to Baltimore, who only agreed to accept him if New York covered 19 of the $24 million owed to McCann over the final 2 seasons of his contract. This year saw the franchise pay its former backstop $11 million to turn out for the Orioles. This deal's kind of been a lose-lose for all parties. The exact number of just how much the Mets are covering of Max Scherzer's 2023 contract is unknown, but based on a few different reports, we were able to piece something together. It has been rumored that the Mets will cover $30.8 million of Scherzer's Rangers salary in 2024, in addition to sending Texas $35.5 million in total. Assuming this gap is going to pay for his salary in 2023, that would mean the New York Mets are paying Scherzer some $4.7 million to play for the Rangers. That's actually not all that bad considering the names and contributions elsewhere on this list. Probably seen 50-something million thrown around as far as to what the Mets are paying Justin Verlander to play for the Stros. That is not entirely accurate though. We do know the Mets are paying $35 million of Justin Verlander's salary for this year and next. We don't really have an idea of how specific the breakdown of when that's distributed is. Given the similarities between Verlander and Scherzer's contracts, it's pretty much safe to assume the breakdown is going to be pretty much the same. In that case, it's pretty safe to assume the Astros' newest addition is also being paid $4.7 million for the remainder of 2023. Like McCann, Eduardo Escobar was signed as a 30-something-year-old free agent that had a single All-Star appearance to his name. The differences between Escobar and McCann is that Escobar actually produced reasonably well, although not enough to change the team's fortunes this year. By eating $4.72 million in salary for the remainder of this season, the Mets were able to extract a few prospects from the Angels. Mark Hanna leaving Oakland was pretty sad. He was a Bay Area player. He was a Bay Area guy through and through. While his signing for the Mets was hailed as an interesting addition at the time, Cano's never really produced for the franchise over the past 2 seasons. That is why Cano was sent to Milwaukee as part of the team's mad dash for prospects at the trade deadline, with New York retaining $3.3 million of his salary. For some reason, and some reason I don't understand, the New York Mets are more than happy to take on awful contracts from the Seattle Mariners as long as it nets them a serviceable reliever in the process. This year saw New York acquire Trevor Gott and his 4.03 ERA, as well as Chris Flexen. The latter was scheduled to make $4 million in 2023, meaning Steve Cohen was responsible for a prorated amount of roughly $3 million, maybe a little less than that. The thing with Flexen, though, is that he was pretty much immediately designated for assignment the minute the trade was completed, and the Mets would just outright release him a few days later. Money well spent indeed. Talk about a disaster here. The Mets would trade J.D. Davis and a few other prospects for Darren Ruff at the 2022 MLB trade deadline. In return, the team got 28 pretty disappointing games out of Ruff all told, and paid him $2.53 million to not turn up in 2023. This was certainly not the best use of resources in team history. Bobby Bonilla and Bobby Bonilla Day has been covered in far greater depth by outlets much better than what I do here. So if you'd like to know more, you can read about it there, and I'll put a link in the description below to different articles. However, he is still technically being paid out by the Mets that lofty sum of $1.19 million annually. All he has to do for this money is not play for the team. Not that they would want him to play for the team these days anymore, but still, you would like a little better return on investment. Tommy Pham was surprisingly decent for the New York Mets this season when compared to some of the previous campaigns he had put together. That probably explains a little bit why the team didn't need to cover as much salary when shipping him out to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Well, that and the fact the prospect they did receive in return for Pham was more a lottery ticket than anything else. Bobby Bonilla Day, it may get all the attention, but Brett Saberhagen has a similar, although not as lucrative, arrangement with the Mets as well. The pitcher gets $250,000 annually to not play for the team. That is a pretty sweet deal, and one I would gladly sign up for. Perhaps the most puzzling thing about the New York Mets' dead money is that the majority of these deals were a bad idea at the time they were signed. What the hell was happening that the team felt compelled to give a bunch of declining veterans longer-term deals for more money than they needed to be paid? To that extent, it's really difficult to blame Cohen for this mess and for all of this dead money being paid out. If anything, I would think he deserves commendation, at least a little commendation, for avoiding the fallacy of a sunken cost and continuing to press ahead with this roster and these players that weren't going anywhere and they weren't doing anything for the franchise. You can also understand the logic of him signing Verlander and Scherzer to those deals at the start of the season. Then again, handing Chris Flexen $3 million for the right to acquire a middling reliever is probably not the savviest bit of business in MLB history. Maybe we can blame Cohen just a little bit as well. As bad as that $56.42 million the Mets are paying out in dead money this season sounds, it actually gets even worse in 2024 when the team will owe Verlander and Scherzer a $60 million combined, while still also paying guys like Bonilla and Saberhagen for the time being. In a weird way, I probably have more respect for the Mets paying $60 million to have 2 Hall of Fame pitchers play elsewhere than the Oakland A's cobbling together a AAA roster for $56 million. Anyway, baseball may fancy itself as America's pastime. However, the real pastime in America, at least in these days, it's spending money on stupid crap you don't really need and is probably a scam anyway. So in that sense, it's good to see Cohen embrace both pastimes. That does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback. Hashtag take it out to the 25.